go ahead, sir. You go ahead. Yes. Good morning. You glad you came today? Glad you're in the house. Take a breath. Yeah, let that settle in there for a minute. Good morning. I want to start this morning before we get into talking about spirituality and self-mastery, which is our topic for the day. I want to recognize that this is a holiday weekend. It's Veterans Weekend, tomorrow Veterans Day. And so I want to honor and recognize any vets that we have in the house this morning. If you would please stand so we could recognize you. Thank you, sir. Thank you. Stay standing if you would. Stay standing if you would, please. Stay standing if you would for just a moment. The rest of us, I'd like you to just extend your hands to these beloved individuals for just a moment, any one of them near you, and I invite you to take a breath with me. And I allow my words to be your words as we simply extend a blessing to these individuals, a blessing of gratitude and thanksgiving that says we see you, we hear you, and you are important to us. But what we know is that your sacrifice, your willingness to serve has made possible our gathering here this morning. And what we also know is that as a country, as a collective, we have not always done the best that we can do in taking care of you, in welcoming you home, in ensuring that your mental health and that your needs are met. We have not always, and perhaps even in this moment, are not doing the best that we can do. And so it's important for us to take at least a symbolic moment to say thank you. And to not only thank you, but to pledge in our spirituality, in our growth, in our continued evolution as spiritual beings, two things. One, that we understand our covenant with you, and that we will do our utmost to continue to improve the ways in which we provide and care for all of the ways in which we need to be providing and caring for you and for your families. And secondly, that as we continue in our spiritual growth and evolution as spiritual beings, we are committed to creating a world that works for everyone, that doesn't require veterans of war anymore, because we transform the planet through our spiritual growth. So we say thank you. We say thank you. We bless you. We thank God for you, and we commit to our continued evolution for your health and for ours. And so it is. Let's thank them again. We're speaking this month about spirituality and moral leadership, how to step into an evolutionary way that provides the leadership that creates a world that works for everyone, which is something in our leadership class. We've been talking about how we are all leaders within ourselves, in our families, in our communities, in our places of worship, wherever we are. Leadership is not a title or a position. It's a way of being that we bring to the world. And so when I say moral leadership, I'm speaking to all of us at some level, that we all have that part in us. Last week we talked about the idea that in general that spirituality is something that we cherish as a spiritual community and as a tradition, and it's something that is part of the evolutionary unfoldment of our being. And I shared, perhaps shockingly last week, that the notion, the evolutionary notion of people becoming more spiritual and less religious is something that actually attracts people to communities like ours, and that trend is not a new trend, that it's actually a very old idea of reaching out in consciousness to more spiritual ideologies and values and less religiosity. And then in fact the moniker of spiritual but not religious goes all the way back to Jesus. That was a bit shocking for some perhaps last week, that Jesus was spiritual and not religious. He was more committed to the evolutionary consciousness that was flowing through him, not providing a new doctrine for people to follow. That was somebody else later. And so we honor that part of the evolutionary part of our soul that is here to wake up and to expand into an ever-increasing good for ourselves and the world around us. Yes? And so today we talk about self-mastery, and I want to talk about how our spiritual tradition speaks to the value of self-mastery and the evolutionary process of that from the lower self to the higher self, if we can do that, to speak about what it is that we do as a community. Ernest Holmes, many years ago, provided the articulation of the science of mind teaching, which was the latest, at that time, latest iteration within the New Thought tradition of a spirituality and a gift to the world that says there's something about our soul, there's something about our consciousness, there's something about our thoughts, and there's something about the universal wholeness that we are a part of that is important to understand metaphysically, so that we can bring healing to ourselves and to the planet. His desire was not to bring a new religion into the world. His desire was to bring a new spiritual lens through which we could see the wisdom in all traditions. That's something that we stand on here this morning. And so applied at the individual level, we come here to be free. We come here to be, I was just recently in a conversation with somebody which I'll speak more about later, and we were talking about, I don't know how to quite frame it. I guess we were talking about from their perspective, the rightness or wrongness of certain New Thought teachers. It was an interesting conversation for me to be in. And it was like, well, because I was talking about some evolutionary people that I know who are really on cutting edge of consciousness, and I was mentioning them, and they were saying, well, I'm not sure that person is really New Thought because they still theologically talk about this and that and the other thing, and I was struggling in the conversation because I thought, who cares? I said, who cares? And they were trying to pin it all down. And I said, one thing I ended up saying in the conversation was, I'm more committed to liberation than anything else. I love the New Thought tradition. I love Ernest Holmes, and I love all of that. But if somebody grasps all of that or not, I really don't care. If they're committed to liberation, I want to be in partnership with them. I'm committed to the liberation of the planet, of humanity, into our best self. That's what drives spirituality, is what frees us. I said recently on a podcast that I was talking about something else, and I said, get into a theology that liberates and frees you, whatever that is. If you still want or need Jesus to be a part of that, you can do that. Jesus is a liberating presence on the planet. You can be in the relationship with that. If it's Buddhism that does that for you, if it's a nondescript universal spirituality, it doesn't matter. But be in a tradition that liberates and frees you, not one that oppresses you with rules and things to follow. Right? So we come here to be liberated into our bigger self. But let's understand the journey, because we have to start from where we are. Tell somebody, start where you are. And where we are is in the human condition. Where we are is with our little selves, if you will. I don't mean anything belittling by that, but just to say that we have a larger self, which is our non-physical, spiritual consciousness self, and then we have our human dimension self. We have our everyday self that is navigating the three-dimensional world of paying bills and going to work and family and whatever it is, whatever that looks like for you. Traffic, that's a universal thing, isn't it? Yeah. And so the big self that we are reaching for, we each have one, but while we're reaching for that, we should not deny that we have a small self, because the small self is the actor on the stage that puts on the clothes and plays the parts. But our authentic self, our larger spiritual self, is that self which is watching or can watch the play unfold. It's the one that can go backstage and rewrite the script. It's the one that can direct and co-produce with the laws of the universe. It's the one that can see what is happening and decide to change it if it chooses. And what we learn in reading The Science of Mind from Ernest Holmes is that self with a capital S is referring to our divine self. And so the mastery of self-mastery is the use that we make of the creative substance, the infinite potential. Self-mastery relates to our divine connection to Source, which is God. And Ernest Holmes tells us that the human experience is a process in which the self, the capital self, is revealed to the self, lowercase self. And the self must raise, the capital self must raise the lowercase self. This is really hard to explain when I'm reading Ernest Holmes in this way, but the capital self must raise the lowercase self by the capital self, you see. And so we begin every day with a self-revelation. And we begin right where we are, that we have to get a hold of the dimension in which we are living. It doesn't do us any good to be so heavenly minded that we're no earthly good. Right? So we say, get a hold. So tell somebody, get a hold. Get a hold of the dimension that you're living in, right? Now, how many people know some people that don't have a good hold on the dimension that they're living in, right? But then they want to teach you about how things work in the universe. And you're like, listen, you need to get your act together, all right? So we got to work from where we are. Somebody knows what I'm talking about. Get a hold of the dimension that you're living in. And we are living in this dimension. And so our spirituality, our science of mind teaching tells us how to do that. It tells us how to work with our perceptions, our thoughts, and our ideas, our hidden beliefs, our biases, all of those things, so that we can get a better grip and hold on this dimension and become masters of it, to articulate a world that works for ourselves, a world that works for our relationships and for the unfoldment of our greater good. And so we do that by beginning by understanding our perceptions. Our current reality is based on perception. And all perception is flawed. Our current reality of the world, of politics, of your life, of the life of SLCA, of wherever we are, all current reality is based on perception. And all perception is flawed. Why? Because it's based on judgment, primarily. And second, perception is always a snapshot in time posing as ultimate reality. Let me say that again. Perception is always a snapshot in time posing as ultimate reality. This is the way it is. Yeah, right now. Right? But it's not ultimate reality. And so one of the tools of self-mastery is to understand that wherever we are, whatever's happening in our current reality is what is happening. There's no sense in denying that. And so we come to the greater spiritual understanding that our experiences are real, they're just not the truth. Our experiences are real, they're just not the truth of who we are. So we say, well, my experience was I had this happen today, my bank account is this, my relationship is that, whatever it is, your experience is real. There's no sense in denying. You can't, spirituality is not about la, 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 right? That's not spiritual practice, right? It's not a healthy or effective spiritual practice, let's just say that. So we don't deny the reality of our experience, we just deny the truth that it holds over us as ultimate reality. The truth is that we are unlimited beings. The truth is that we are filled with divine infinite potential. The truth is we are always abundant. Our current experience might be this or that or the other, but perception is always a snapshot in time, posing as ultimate reality. Our small self is managed by the ego. Our larger self is managed by the soul. Here's the thing. The soul wants you free, and your ego wants you safe. Soul wants you free, but the ego wants you safe. And so that creates a tension within the evolutionary unfoldment of our consciousness. Have you noticed? Our small self, often thought of as the individual, has these primary hurdles to overcome in self-mastery. Because the ego wants us safe, it will avoid any work that challenges its position or makes us vulnerable. Can you feel that? You just, when I say it, there's even something inside you. There's even part of your ego goes, don't say any more. Right? Stop right there, Rev. Don't you go there. Right? The ego will challenge any position that challenges its position of ultimate authority or that makes us vulnerable. So when we put ourselves in a growth paradigm, have you noticed that sometimes when you're really on the evolutionary edge of your own growth that you lose friends? Right? Because your soul is soaring into your greatest yet to be, and the ego self can't live where it's always lived anymore. Right? And so the things begin to change in that dimension. So because the ego wants us safe and it will avoid the challenging work of its position or making us vulnerable, it uses these two primary methods to deflect. How many people know the ego will deflect? Right, so the soul is grabbing you and pulling in your evolutionary self towards your greater yet to be. And the ego intervenes and does these two things. One is called transference, and the other is called projection. Transference. Transference is the thing that says that I have unresolved issues with people or events in my past, and I transfer them on to other people. So I've got something about my past that I didn't heal, that I didn't get resolved, that I don't have a true understanding of, that still brings up conflict. It's a trigger. It's a button. It's an issue. How many people know you have issues? Everybody's got issues. Some of you have subscriptions. But you're here today to get a prescription for your subscription. Come on, talk to me, somebody. Subscription means you get an issue on a regular basis delivered directly to you with your name on it. Yeah. But we're here to get prescriptions for our subscriptions to our issues. And transference is when those issues that are unresolved, we just transfer them to somebody else. Somebody else is in authority. Somebody else is a leader. Somebody else is in the position or the issue comes up that we are unresolved about, and we transfer our unresolvedness about it onto that person, situation, or thing. Right? And so then we say, that is the matter with me. That is the thing that's the matter with the world. That is the thing that's wrong with people. If they would just get this or just get that. It's those people over there. It's those situations there, you see. Projection is an advanced form of a transference. Projection is unresolved issues with ourself that we foist onto other people. So projection is that person is the matter with me. Right? And it's an unresolved issue with me that I have not resolved. It's a thing that it's a behavior that I don't like about me. And so I see that behavior in other people and I go, aha! Who knows what I'm talking about? Transference and projection. But self-mastery at this level means that you have yourself and your issues in serious check. So self-mastery means that we learn about how consciousness works. We learn about hidden beliefs. We learn about our triggers. We learn about our emotions. We learn about how to see those things coming up and put them in check. Why? Because we know that transference and projections are the ways that the ego works to deflect us from doing our work. And so self-mastery means I have those things in check. I understand that my emotions come up, my buttons get triggered, my things happen. I transfer or project, and when I do, I notice it, I see it, and I ask myself, what is the greater revelation that's trying to happen here? What does my soul really want to grow into? What gift am I here to uncover? What do I need to forgive? What do I need to let go of? How can I grow into my greater self? So self-mastery at this level means you got those things in check, and when you've got those things in check, what happens is you can begin to manifest the life that you want. You begin to be healthier in your relationships, in your finances, in your job, and in all manner of expression, or as we say in New Thought, the 5 Ps, right? Princes, princesses, parking places, and palaces. Begin to manifest at that level, right? How many people know that, right? You're in this teaching, you start practicing the stuff, and you begin to get that stuff going. And it's like, okay, this is good. Now I got some level of self-mastery. I know how to keep my emotions in check, my consciousness in check. I know how to know what's really trying to happen through me. I know how to manifest the desires of my heart. This is really good stuff. This is good stuff at this level. Self-mastery at this level is really awesome. You own your triggers. You own your emotions. You reconcile and heal your past. You love yourself along the way as you continue to grow and learn. And you don't make anyone or anything responsible for your growth or transformation. That's what self-mastery is at the individual level. That's a beautiful thing. And it's a work in progress. And so we're all in therapy together this morning. Right? We're in therapy together. Now, if you just did this, and that's all that you did, you would be doing the world a great service. To be in a practice of self-mastery at that level. Could you imagine your life? Everything's in check. You know how to manifest your heart's desire. You know how to not blame anybody else for anything that's happening. You know how to receive it as a gift for your own insight that actually accelerates you to the thing that you want. Nothing's holding you back when you've got this stuff in check. Can you feel that? That would be a tremendous gift to give to the world, wouldn't it? There's a lot of people that aren't operating at that level. But there's more to us than just our small selves. You see, Since the primary tool that is used, particularly in the science of mind, at this level is our connection with Source, you already recognize that there is more to life than just you. So what do I mean by that? The primary tool that you use to create this sort of self-mastery is to understand that there is more to life than just you. That you are connected to a universal wholeness, that you are connected to a vibration of peace and well-being, that your issues are not defining you, that there is a power that moves in, through, and as you. Ernest Holmes used to open his radio program with the phrase, there is a power in the universe greater than you are, and you can use it. There's a power in the universe greater than you are. That power is wholeness. That power is love. That power is peace. That power is ultimate source or divine reality, infinite intelligence, whatever you want to call it. Pick your own name. That power can be used by you to heal, transform, to overcome, to put in check, to understand your growth and evolution. And so this is the byproduct. This is the means by which you move into self-mastery. You following me? But that thing that you're connecting to is bigger than you are. That thing that you're connecting to is the intersection of two very powerful things that we have in this teaching, two very primary principal ideas that are at the heart of what this teaching called New Thought, Centers for Spiritual Living, Science of Mind, all of those terms are interchangeable, that the heart is these two things. One, that we are whole, perfect, and complete, and two, that we are one with a power greater than we are. Wholeness and oneness are the two primary factors, the two primary ingredients that come into the leveraging of this kind of spirituality that we're studying here and that we're being about here. One, that we're whole, perfect, and complete, and two, that we are one with the divine power that is bigger than us. It's the intersection of those two things. You can't have one without the other. So Quimby sat down in the 1860s. In the 1860s, opened up an office in Boston to do mental healing with people, and he was working primarily with two ideas. One, that you are whole, perfect, and complete, and two, that you are part of a power that is bigger than you. It's that oneness that actually makes your wholeness possible, right? So it's the intersection of those two ideas. And the entire New Thought movement accelerated out of that office and out of that moment in consciousness, that awareness of those two things. Are you following me? So if wholeness is the primary tool used in self-mastery of the everyday life, then it must lead us to a radical new calling. We must be cautious not to get stagnant in our lower self-mastery by continuing to grow and evolve. Claiming our wholeness as individuals sets us free. Claiming our wholeness as individuals sets us free. So as an individual, we say, I am whole, perfect, and complete. I am one with universal power greater than I am. So we learn the power of affirmation. We learn the power of our consciousness. We learn the power of our thoughts. All of these things as an individual and applied at the level of our own life and consciousness. Yes? Claiming our wholeness as an individual sets us free. But here's the caution warning. Clinging to our individuality will stagnate our growth as a spiritual being. Clinging to our wholeness, claiming our wholeness as an individual will set you free, but clinging to your individuality will stagnate your growth as a spiritual being. Why? Because you're not an island unto yourself. And that's where the irony of this teaching comes in. And it's why I want to teach this to you today about really understanding what self-mastery is. Because it's tempting to think that it's just about my island. It's tempting to think it's just about me coming into a mastery of my spiritual awareness of myself, and I can point to all the literature and all the practices, and it's about affirmations and owning my consciousness and owning myself. It's about all those things, and it's about me. It's all about me. Yeah, but the thing that made it possible for you to step into your liberation was a power that was bigger than you are, that is one with everything. And so the moment that you stop your growth and say, I'm just here to manage myself, you see, you begin to cultivate a consciousness that separates you from the oneness that made you free in the first place. That, you see, the moment we accept, let me see if I can say it this way, the moment that we accept that we are made in the image and likeness of God, which means the image and likeness of wholeness, the moment that you accept that you are made in the image and likeness of God and are therefore the vehicle through which God's wholeness is revealed, is the same moment that we must accept responsibility for any place in the world where wholeness is not revealing itself. I'll say it again. The moment we accept that we are made in the image and likeness of wholeness, and therefore the vehicle through which God's wholeness is revealed, is the same moment that we must accept responsibility for any place in the world where wholeness is not revealing itself. Why? Because we're one with it. We're one with all the pain of the world. We're one with all the dysfunction of the world. We're one with all the Twitterverse. We're one with, we're one with all the dysfunction. Any place where wholeness is not revealing itself. That which made you into your liberated self whole and free is not separate from that which is going on over there. There is no over there. There's only one consciousness. And you wouldn't be able to step into your wholeness unless you understood that, you see. Otherwise, our spirituality becomes an isolated act of privilege rather than an evolutionary growth of transformation and liberation. You see, so I was having this conversation the other day, and I won't say who it was with, but it was a colleague in the field of New Thought. And we were having this conversation. Well, I don't understand why we need to do all of this social justice stuff. And I said, well, tell me more about this. Well, we just need to teach consciousness that God is all there is and that we come from wholeness. When we come from enoughness, then that's enough. You see, if I get stopped by the police, I don't fear that anything's going to happen to me. I don't fear that this is what this person was saying. I don't fear that anything, and I tell the people of color in my congregation, I tell them that you need to come from wholeness. You need to come from enoughness. If you come from this place, then nothing will happen to you. And I said, well, sometimes you're just sitting in your living room in your underwear eating some ice cream, and somebody comes through the door with a gun. Sometimes it got nothing to do with the consciousness that you're holding when you're sitting at the steering wheel. Why? Because consciousness is all that there is, and consciousness is not only working through your affirmations and the consciousness that you're cultivating, it's also working through unconscious bias. It's also working through hidden beliefs. It's also working through all of those things. And so you tell me, which is faster, the affirmation that you're producing or the unconscious bias of the officer in that moment? Which one triggers faster? Unconscious bias and hidden beliefs live in the reptilian brain. It's a lot older and it has a lot more practice. It moves a lot faster than our conscious affirmations. And so we have to understand both, and we have to understand navigating the world in both. And so this conversation unfolding said, I've manifested the good in my life. I said, okay, really? How did you do that? By claiming my good and knowing my worth and coming from wholeness. I said, oh, that's fantastic. I must feel good. How do you feel about the people that are suffering over there? Well, they must do that as I did. This is an imaginary conversation here. They must do as I did, as a summary of the real conversation that took place. They must do as I did and pick themselves up and work from their own consciousness. You see, if our teaching stops there, it falls short of embracing true oneness, which makes our personal healing possible. And so those social conditions and things that are over there, my teacher, those are all social conditions and things over there. It's as if we say, and my teacher told me not to look at conditions. My teacher told me, don't look over there, only know the truth. See, yeah, but we're supposed to teach oneness. So tell me again of this oneness of which you believe in. If you bring forth your wholeness, then what you bring forth will save you, Gospel of Thomas says. If you don't bring forward what's within you, then what you do not bring forth will destroy you, it says. If we don't bring forth our wholeness, it will destroy us, because you will be in constant search through codependence, addiction, drama, unmet expectations of those around you. And so how do we bring forth wholeness? We bring forth wholeness by becoming authors of and solutions of our authors of solutions and not complaints. We bring forth our wholeness by understanding how consciousness works. We bring through wholeness by helping to heal the world. But you see, in order to bring forth the fundamental wholeness that is within you, means that you have to heal your psychosis of separation. The natural outcome of which is repairing God's original covenant that we belong to each other. When we know that we belong to one another, then we begin to actively build the temple not made with hands. We begin to build the kingdom of heaven on earth as it already is in heaven. We begin to build that which Ernest Holmes said would be built by the emancipated souls of this planet. We don't have to move the world, Holmes says, is going to move anyway. However, it frees us to do joyously and free from morbidity that which we should do in the social state. That's from the Science of Mind. When we understand our oneness, we understand that there is no over there. And so as I rise up in my own self-mastery, I get my own life in check. I understand how to use the tools of consciousness to create a world that works. And for the desires of my heart, I know that I'm not separate from the world around me, that there's only one consciousness, and therefore it is my duty, it's my privilege, it's my obligation and responsibility and my joy to help create liberation for the rest of the planet. To see any place where there's something that's out of alignment, to look at that and say, what is mine to do? There, in that space, what am I to bring forth? Because the only reason people will come and ask questions in classes, well, what about? God is all there is, and God is good all the time. Then what about the suffering over there? What about that, Rev? I love it when people come to class. Ah, what about that? Ha! I said, that only exists because we allow it to exist. Because consciousness is all that there is. And so there is no other thing doing that. There's only us. There's only the collective consciousness of the planet, which you and I are operating from. So when we take responsibility for that and see that the things that disturb us are the places in which we have to raise up our voice and bring forward a different vibration of what we want to live in. We have to not just no longer struggle to try to save the world, but to reveal the world that we want to see, to reveal the world of kindness and love and compassion and generosity and justice, to move from charity to justice, to not continue to accept the status quo of the haves and the have-nots, but to actually articulate a world that works for everyone by calling forward justice and allowing that consciousness to reveal itself. Are you following what I'm saying? You see, a spiritual theology that dares to proclaim radical inclusivity such as ours and spiritual equality must stand up and speak up in a nation where basic human rights are denied to any of its people. Failure to do so is not only a moral crisis, it's spiritual malfeasance. It's theological bankrupt behavior. A movement that claims an inclusive divine power and promotes the personal embodiment of such a power, but refuses to act on behalf of those who labor under the delusion that such a power is not available to them, fails to grasp the fundamental oneness on which it claims to stand. You see? And so self-mastery is really about liberating the entire planet, beginning with ourselves, and then asking ourselves what is mine to do to bring wholeness, peace, justice, love, and beauty to everything that I see around me. And as long as there are headlines of disenfranchisement, as long as there are headlines of not enoughness, as long as there are headlines of discrimination, then you and I still have work to do. And spiritual communities like ours are still relevant places to do the work, to come, to nurture ourselves, to pick ourselves up, to get in touch with our own wholeness, to celebrate each other and to celebrate our diversity, to practice the presence, to practice the tools so that we become liberated in our own selves, and then to go further, because this is not a private social club. This is a spiritual gym. We get to exercise the muscles and practice so that we can get strength out there in the world of conditions and effects, you see. How'd you like that one, Idella? Spiritual gym. Come on. Come on. Come on. Let's do it. Let's do it. It's a spiritual gym. You got to come in and get pumped up. All right. We're going to end right there. Andrew Harvey. We'll close with this, and I'll ask practitioners to pray with me. That felt good. A spirituality that is devoid of authentic political and social consciousness does little to halt the suicidal juggernaut of history. On the other hand, an activism that is not purified by profound and spiritual, psychological self-awareness, rooted in divine truth, wisdom, and compassion, will only perpetuate the problem that it's trying to solve. However, the righteous intention is. When, however, the deepest and most grounded spiritual vision is married to the practice and pragmatic drive to transform all existing political, economic, and social institutions, a holy force, the power of love and wisdom in action, is born. This force I define as sacred activism. This is the force that we are seeking to cultivate in the world and in ourselves. This is the force and the practice that we anchor ourselves in together here. And so with that, I ask the practitioners, the present, to rise with me, to stand in agreement and consciousness with this divine idea, to find a place throughout the room as we move into prayer. And we symbolically move throughout the room so that we just know that wherever you are, there's a consciousness that is holding you. For what we also know is that there is no place where God is not. And the God that we connect with is a God whose center is everywhere and circumference is nowhere. So it is all encompassing in this moment and in every moment. And into that vibrational field, this is what I know. One power, one presence, one divine life, one infinite intelligence, one sacred design and idea that desires only one thing: the complete emancipation into all expression, the complete liberation and freedom to express as joy and as love and as possibility at every level of our being, from the individual self to the collective of humanity, to the earth and the animals, and to all aspects of creation. Everywhere, seen and unseen, is a portal through which this divine possibility now pours itself. And it's asking us, you and I, our consciousness, our conscious awareness, to be the vehicle through which it reaches the collective. And it says you must begin with yourself. Take a look. Is there any place where I need to continue to practice, to learn, to grow, to put my emotions in check, understand my own hidden beliefs and unconscious bias? And then out of that place of self-mastery, give the gift to the world of activism for a world that works for everyone. For that is how I demonstrate that I truly know that there is one power and one presence, and that which has made me free is infinitely available to all of life and all creation. And it is reached through my hands, my heart, my movement, my being. And so I simply affirm that this work is happening here, in this community. It is happening in New Thought communities all over the world, and it is happening in spiritual places, temples and mosques and synagogues and chapels and living rooms, deserts and valley floors, riverbeds, everywhere where two or more are gathered together in the awareness that there is a power in the universe greater than we are, and that we can use it, and that it is using us right now. So for this and so much more, I truly give thanks as I simply release this prayer and allow it to be the activity unto my life. And so it is. Thank you. Peace and blessings.